Hey guys, my name is Sanjit and today we'll be talking about aerofoil. So before we talk about aerofoil, I want to start with these four forces of flight. You might have seen this in many textbooks and on social media websites, on the internet. So this is what anybody starts with, but I would like to just go through the basics of this and come back to all these points in detail. So anything, this is an airplane. I don't know if my drawing skills are worth it, but anyway, this is an airplane. So the force that is pushing it upwards is lift, and this is weight, which is against it, or the gravitational pull of the of the earth on the aircraft is the weight, force of weight acting on it. So you should remember the Newton's third law, in which it says that any action has an equal and opposite reaction. So when there's lift, there is weight, right? So the aircraft has the upward force called lift, and the downward force, which is the gravitational pull of the earth, called as weight. As the aircraft moves forward, there is thrust. The energy produced by the engines basically comes in the form of thrust, which propels the aircraft forward. And now against the thrust there is drag. Now drag also is in many forms, but all you need to remember, it's the frictional force. It can be the air which on coming in contact with the aircraft, it's trying to slow it down, or it's the parts itself of the aircraft which is producing friction. So drag in layman can be called called as basically friction, right? But I would come in detail to all of this really soon. So the four forces of flight: lift, weight, thrust, and drag, right? Now coming back to aerofoil. Now aerofoil, what is aerofoil basically? Aerofoil, my instructor used to tell me, any object that can create lift is called as aerofoil. Before starting about aerofoil, I would like to read you its definition. So on the internet, it says that a body shaped to produce an aerodynamic reaction perpendicular to its direction of motion for a small resistance force in that plane, right? So I know it sounds a bit complicated initially, but it's not. So what is it saying? That any body that is creating lift. So lift is that force, that perpendicular force that we are talking about. This is the direction of motion. So as the aircraft is moving forward, lift is created perpendicular 90 degrees to it, and the relationship to drag is that lift to drag, the ratio, drag has to be lower at a small resistance. The resistance is the drag that we are talking about. So any object that is creating a lift with less drag can be called as aerofoil, right? Now whenever you hear about aerofoil, the diagram that is shown anywhere is something like this, right? So this is nothing but a cross section. Now when it comes to aerofoil, it can be in many forms. So let's imagine an aeroplane, right? Aeroplane has wings, aeroplane has a tail, aeroplane has multiple structures that we can think of, and we'll come to all those structures and details. But an aeroplane in itself can be called as an aerofoil, right? The wing is an aerofoil, the tail, the rudders, the elevators, etc. all are aerofoils. In a helicopter, the rotors are an aerofoil, the tail rotor is an aerofoil, right? So now there's something that I always used to get confused with. What's cross section? A cross section, so this can be considered a cross section of a wing, right? This diagram. Okay, now what's a cross section? Imagine a ball, okay, a ball, and let's say you slice it into not a rubber ball. Let's say you have a solid ball in your hand. Now you have a solid ball, and when you slice it, you will get exactly a circle like this, right? So let's imagine taking a slice of an airplane, or sorry, not an airplane, a wing, right? Let's say we take a slice of a wing. This is what it will look like. A cross-sectional shape of a wing, or let's say even if you take a cross-section of, or a slice of a rotor of a helicopter, that's what it would look like. Now that's what an aerofoil will be related to, right? Even in our further classes in which I'll be talking about the sections of an aerofoil. Now even in an aerofoil I want to talk about something basic. So there is something called a symmetrical aerofoil and an asymmetrical aerofoil, right? So symmetrical, in which if I try to cut an aerofoil in two halves, we'll get two equal halves. And an asymmetrical aerofoil, in which when I cut an aerofoil in two halves, we won't get two equal halves. So symmetry and asymmetry is basically, if I take an object and cut it into two halves, you'll get two identical twins, right? You get two identical parts. That's symmetry. And if you cut an object into two equal halves and if you do not get two equal parts, it's called as asymmetry, right? So aerofoil, symmetrical, in which you're getting two equal halves, and asymmetrical, in which you're not getting two equal halves. So that is basically a symmetrical and asymmetrical aerofoil. So that's all we take out of this class. I'll come back soon with another one. Happy landings, guys. Cheers.